My name was Eva Carter. I was 29 years old, and I worked as a caregiver at a small community health clinic on the east side of the city. My life was simple, quiet, and steady. At least, that was what I told myself each morning when I tied my hair back and checked the time on the old clock above the break room sink. I thought everything was finally calm. My fiancé, MacLeon, had promised me he would never lie again. After years of small secrets, excuses, and broken trust, he swore he had changed. For months, things felt almost normal. I wanted to believe him so badly that I convinced myself it was true. At the clinic, my favorite part of the day was helping the older patients who came for physical therapy or regular checkups. Many of them had no family close by. That was how I met Mr. Ellis, a thin old man with grey hair and kind eyes. He wore the same faded jacket every day and sat in the same wooden chair near the window. He rarely spoke unless I asked him a direct question, but he always smiled when I brought him warm tea. He held the cup the way someone holds something fragile, like it mattered more than it should. "You're very kind," he told me once, in a thin, tired voice. "People forget how far kindness can go." I laughed softly. "It's just tea." He shook his head. "No, it's never just tea." I didn't understand what he meant then. That morning, as I helped him button his coat, he looked at me in a strange way. Not sad, not happy, just knowing. As if he was carrying a secret he wasn't ready to share. And for the first time, I felt a tiny shiver of something I couldn't name. A warning. Or maybe a beginning. The next few weeks passed in a soft, predictable rhythm. I worked my morning shift at the clinic, helped patients with small tasks, and spent extra time with Mr. Ellis when the waiting room grew quiet. He never talked much about his past. He never mentioned any family. And he never stayed long after his appointments, usually slipping out before the crowds got loud. But he always came back. Sometimes he brought me small things, a wrapped candy, a folded paper bird, a smooth stone he found near the bus stop. He acted embarrassed every time. "I don't need gifts," I told him. "I know," he replied. "But I like giving them to you." It was moments like that which strengthened my belief that kindness still mattered. Even MacLeon noticed. He said I looked lighter, like something about the clinic made me glow. I wanted that to be true. But small signs of trouble started to creep back in. MacLeon stayed out late twice without telling me why. He said his phone died. He said he forgot to text. He said it wasn't a big deal. I wanted to shake the worry away, but worry had a way of sticking to me. One afternoon, as I walked Mr. Ellis down the hallway, his steps slowed. "Do you trust easily, Eva?" he asked out of nowhere. "Not anymore," I answered. "That's good," he whispered. His eyes softened. "But don't lose the part of you that hopes." I frowned. "Why are you saying this?" He opened his mouth as if to explain, then shut it again. Another time. But another time never came. Because the next morning, he didn't show up for his appointment. And for the first time since I met him, the clinic chair by the window sat completely empty. Something was wrong. I felt it. I just didn't know how wrong things were about to get. The call came while I was slicing apples in the break room. My phone buzzed against the counter, and I wiped my hands before answering. "Hello, is this Mrs. Johnson?" a woman asked. My stomach dropped. "No, you must have the wrong number." "This is the number listed for her," the woman replied calmly. "I'm calling from the city hospital. Your husband has been admitted." "My what?" I almost laughed. "I'm not married." She hesitated. "The patient specifically requested Mrs. Johnson. And this is the contact number on his file." A cold prickle crept up my arms. "What is the patient's name?" There was a soft shuffle of papers. Arthur J. My breath caught. Mr. Ellis. The world around me blurred. I grabbed my bag, said nothing to anyone, and rushed out of the clinic. I ran straight to the hospital, my mind spinning with questions. Why was he using another name? Why list me as anything, let alone a wife? When I reached the reception desk, the nurse looked up sharply. You're Mrs. Johnson? I swallowed hard. I'm Eva. I was told Arthur asked for me. Her expression softened. He refused any other visitor. She led me down a long hallway to a private ward I didn't know existed. The room wasn't like the clinic. It smelled of polished floors and expensive equipment. Everything looked too clean, too quiet, too hidden. When I stepped inside, Mr. Ellis, or Arthur J., was lying in the bed, pale but awake. The moment he saw me, his hand jerked toward mine. I'm sorry, he breathed. I'm so sorry I lied. Lied about what? I whispered. His eyes glistened. Everything is yours. What does that mean? I asked, leaning closer. But before he could answer, his body went slack, and the machines began to scream. I stumbled back as nurses rushed in. And once again, I was left with nothing but questions. The nurses pushed me out of the room as alarms echoed down the hallway. I stood frozen, gripping the railing with shaking hands. Everything inside me buzzed with fear and confusion. One of the nurses returned after a few minutes, her expression unreadable. We stabilized him, she said. But he's unconscious again. I nodded, though my heart pounded so loudly I barely heard her. Are you really not his wife? She asked gently. No, I whispered. I barely know him. She gave me a strange look. Then why would he list you as his only emergency contact? Why call you his closest family? I don't know, I said honestly. I wish I did. When she walked away, I stayed in the corridor, leaning against the wall. The world felt tilted, as if I had stepped into someone else's life without meaning to. Then my phone buzzed again. MacLeon. Where are you? He demanded before I could speak. You left work without telling me. What's going on? I hesitated. I'm at the hospital. What? Why? It's about Mr. Ellis. His real name is something else. And they called me Mrs. Johnson and... Who's Johnson? MacLeon snapped. Eva, what's happening? Why are you involved in this? I don't know, I repeated, my voice small. Well, it sounds like you're hiding something. I closed my eyes. I'm not. We'll talk later, he said sharply, then hung up. His doubt cut deeper than I expected. When I finally stepped back into the ward, a man in a dark suit stood by the door. He looked at me with unusual intensity. You're Eva Carter? He asked. Yes. He nodded. Arthur left instructions. When he wakes up, or if he doesn't, you're to be contacted immediately. He handed me an envelope. This is for you. What's inside? I asked. You'll know when you're ready. Before I could question him further, he walked away. And the envelope in my hand felt heavier than paper should ever feel. I didn't open the envelope right away. My hands shook too much, and a strange fear settled in my chest. The kind of fear that comes when you know your life is about to change, even if you don't know how. Instead, I sat in the empty waiting lounge outside Arthur's ward. The lights above flickered softly, and the distant hum of machines filled the silence. I tightened my coat around myself and stared at the sealed envelope on my lap. Why me? Why would an old man with no family list me as anything important, let alone someone close enough to carry his secrets? I finally slid a finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single key. Attached to it was a tiny metal tag engraved with 2 letters. EC. My initials. My mouth went dry. A soft creak pulled my attention to the hallway. A nurse passed by, but behind her, I saw something that made my skin prickle. A man standing near the elevators, watching me. He wore a long coat and kept his face lowered, but the moment our eyes met, he stepped into the elevator and vanished. Was he connected to Arthur? To the envelope? To something else? I didn't know. When I finally left the hospital, the night air felt colder than usual. I walked fast, clutching the key in my pocket. My mind raced with questions that had no answers. When I reached home, MacLeon was waiting at the door, arms crossed. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" he asked. "Or do I have to find out myself?" His voice wasn't angry. It was suspicious. And that scared me more than anything that had happened so far. MacLeon stood blocking the doorway like he was guarding a secret I didn't know I had. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the key in my hand. "What's that?" "It's nothing," I said too fast. He raised an eyebrow. "Nothing. You ran out of work, went to the hospital, and came home with a key that isn't yours." His tone sharpened. "Eva, do you know how this looks?" I stepped back, trying to breathe. "I'm not hiding anything. I just don't know what's happening myself." He let out a slow sigh and ran a hand through his hair. "You should have called me. You were already upset," I whispered. "I'm upset because I don't understand why you're suddenly part of some stranger's life." He crossed his arms. "This isn't normal." I didn't disagree. But something deep inside told me the key mattered, and I didn't want MacLeon involved in something I didn't understand yet. When he finally walked into the kitchen, I hurried to my room and hid the key in the small wooden box under my bed. It felt safer there. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Arthur's pale face, the envelope, the strange man at the elevator, and the letters EC engraved in metal. By morning, I decided I needed answers, with or without MacLeon's support. I returned to the clinic early, hoping for normalcy. But the minute I stepped inside, a hush fell over the staff. People whispered when they saw me. A few nurses looked at me with a mix of curiosity and something else. Respect? Sympathy? I couldn't tell. Then Dr. Alden approached me. "Eva," he said gently, "someone was here asking for you." My heart jumped. "Who?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But he left this." He handed me a small card with only 3 words written in neat handwriting. "You're not safe." A chill ran down my spine. Because whoever wrote that card knew exactly who I was. And they knew where to find me. I stared at the card so long that the words almost blurred together. "You're not safe." It didn't feel like a threat, more like a warning. But why would anyone warn me? Did he say anything else? I asked Dr. Alden. He shook his head. "Just said it was important you got the message." I slipped the card into my pocket and forced myself to work through the morning routine. Cleaning trays, helping patients to their seats, checking schedules, anything to keep my mind busy. But the whole time, I felt eyes on me. And when I reached the waiting room, I froze. The chair by the window, Mr. Ellis's chair, had a small folded blanket on it. A nurse walked by and noticed my stare. "A man came in earlier," she explained. "He said this belonged to your friend. He wanted you to have it." I unfolded the blanket. Something slipped out and hit the floor with a soft thud. A photograph. My breath caught. It was a picture of Arthur, younger, healthier, dressed in a suit, standing in front of a large building with marble steps. Beside him was a woman holding a child. On the back was a date from 20 years ago and one sentence. "Find what he left behind." I couldn't stop shaking. Someone was leading me somewhere, but in pieces, like a trail. At lunch, I tried calling the hospital for an update on Arthur, but the nurse simply said, "He's stable but still unconscious. You'll be informed of any change." As I hung up, my phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. "If you want answers, go to the place in the photo." My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Was this a trap? Or the truth? Before I could decide, MacLeon stormed into the clinic, voice low and tense. "Eva, we need to talk. Now." His eyes weren't angry. They were afraid. And something told me whatever he wanted to say would change everything. MacLeon pulled me outside the clinic before I could protest. The air was cold, sharp against my skin. He looked around as if checking for listeners. "Eva, someone came to the apartment last night." My chest tightened. Who? I don't know. I heard footsteps outside the door. When I looked through the peephole, a man in a coat was standing there. He ran a hand across his mouth. He left right after. Didn't knock. Didn't speak. My stomach twisted. Did you call the police? No, he said quickly. Because I wasn't sure if it had to do with you or me. I whispered. Yes, he said. You run off to the hospital. Someone calls you Mrs. Johnson. Now strangers are leaving messages. He grabbed my shoulders. Eva, what did you get pulled into? I don't know. I said, more loudly than I meant to. I swear I don't know. He stared at me a moment longer. Then his grip softened. I'm trying to protect you. I nodded, but my mind was already racing. Because I recognized his description. The coat, the stance. It was the same man who watched me at the hospital. After MacLeon left, I sat alone behind the clinic, staring at the photograph in my hand. The building behind Arthur looked familiar. Tall columns, old stone, wide steps. Then it hit me. It was the old city library, the one that had been closed for years. A place no one visited anymore. A shiver ran down my arms. Why would Arthur want me to go there? I checked the time. My shift ended in an hour. I could go straight there. I could follow the message and find whatever he wanted me to see. But another thought lingered. What if I wasn't supposed to go alone? What if going there opened a door I couldn't close? Still, curiosity pulled stronger than fear. And I already knew deep down. I was going to the library. No matter what waited inside. When my shift ended, I tucked the photo into my coat and headed toward the old city library. The sun had slipped low, stretching long shadows across the street. The building stood tall and silent, its stone walls stained by years of weather. The front doors were chained shut, but a side entrance had a rusted padlock hanging loose, as if someone had broken it earlier. Someone wanted me to get inside. I pushed the door open and stepped into darkness. Dust floated in the thin beam of light from the cracked windows. Old bookshelves stood like tall, quiet ghosts. The air smelled of paper and time. Every footstep echoed. I walked toward the back of the library, guided only by the memory of the photograph. The same marble steps lined the far wall. And there, at the bottom of the steps, was a small wooden box. My breath caught. It looked exactly like the box I kept under my bed. Hands trembling, I knelt and opened it. Inside was a stack of documents, a faded ID card with Arthur's younger face, and a small metal tag engraved with the same initials as the key in my home. EC. Another matching tag. But why mine? Under the tag was a sealed envelope with my name on it. I opened it and read the short letter inside. Eva, if you're reading this, it means time is running out. The truth is bigger than you know. Protect the key. Trust no one except the person who brings the final message. You will know him by the ring. My pulse raced. The ring. Before I could read the rest, a sharp sound echoed from the far end of the library. A door closing. I spun around. Someone else was inside. Footsteps approached, slow and steady, moving between the shelves. I froze, gripping the wooden box against my chest. A shadow stretched across the floor. And then a voice said softly, Eva, you shouldn't be here. I turned slowly, my heart thudding against my ribs. A tall man stepped from behind a shelf, dressed in a grey coat. I recognized him instantly. The same man who had watched me at the hospital, the same figure MacLeon had seen at our apartment. But now, I noticed something new. A silver ring on his right hand, shaped like a thin band with a small crest. My breath caught. The ring. Who are you? I whispered. He raised both hands, palms open. My name isn't important. I was asked to look after you. By who? I demanded. Arthur, he said. Long before he collapsed. My grip tightened on the wooden box. What does he want from me? Why am I in the middle of this? The man hesitated. It's complicated. Then simplify it. He took a step closer but kept his voice low and steady. Arthur trusted you. More than anyone. You showed him kindness when he had nothing. Not money. Not a home. Not even a name he wanted to keep. My stomach twisted. So he wasn't homeless. Or lost. He walked away from everything, the man said. A long time ago. And now the past he tried to escape is coming back fast. I swallowed. What does that have to do with me? Everything, he said softly. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed somewhere above us. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The man's eyes snapped upward. They found us, he muttered. Who? No time, he said sharply. You need to leave now. Take the box. Take the key. And trust no one, not even the people closest to you. I stepped back. What are you talking about? Footsteps thundered down the old staircase. The man grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the side exit. Go, Eva. Now. I didn't look back. Because deep down, I knew one terrifying thing. Whatever Arthur had left for me, someone else wanted it too. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes before driving home. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Nothing about this made sense. Arthur had no family, no friends, no visitors, no one who ever called him. So why was I the person he asked for? Why was I Mrs. Johnson in his records? And why was a lawyer talking to me like I had just stepped into a world I didn't belong in? The house was quiet when I entered, but I knew from the silence that something was wrong. When I walked into the living room, I found MacLeon sitting stiffly on the sofa. The TV was off. His phone screen glowed in his hand. He looked up at me with narrowed eyes. You didn't answer my messages, he said. I was at the hospital, I replied, dropping my bag. I told you that. Yeah. But you didn't tell me you were visiting some old man who keeps calling you his wife. My breath caught. MacLeon, it's not like that. I saw a photo, he said, turning his phone toward me. Someone had taken a picture of me walking into Arthur's ward. Are you hiding something from me again? Again. That word stung, even though he was the one who had lied in the past. I didn't know anything about this, I said quietly. I'm just trying to understand. He stood up, pacing around the coffee table. People don't put random caregivers as their emergency contact. They don't whisper things like, everything is yours. He's giving you things now? Really, Eva? His voice grew louder, sharper. Suspicion poured out of him like boiling water. I stepped back. MacLeon, please. I need space to figure this out. He stared at me for a long moment. If I find out you're lying, he said, we're done. For the first time since we got engaged, I felt cold inside. Not because of his threat, but because deep down, I wasn't sure what truth even looked like anymore. The next morning, I returned to the hospital. I barely slept, and my head felt heavy. I hoped Arthur might be awake, ready to explain everything. But when I reached the ward, the same quiet tension filled the air. Nurses stepped aside when I walked through, giving me strange, respectful nods. It made my skin crawl. Inside the room, Arthur still lay sleeping, but a new person stood beside his bed. He was tall, dressed in a charcoal suit, holding a leather folder against his chest. His hair was neat, and he looked like someone who worked in places where the floors always shined. You must be Ms. Carter, he said. My name is Mr. Aldrin. I nodded, unsure. I represent Mr. Johnson's estate. Estate. I repeated. The word felt too big for the quiet man who always sat alone in my clinic. Yes, he said. Mr. Johnson has considerable assets. He has been preparing certain documents for several years, and your name appears as a primary recipient. I froze. Why? I barely know him. Mr. Aldrin opened the folder but closed it again before showing me anything. He made these choices himself. My job is only to carry out his wishes. My heart pounded. This must be a mistake. He spoke softly. Mr. Johnson does not make mistakes. My breath shook. Then Arthur stirred. His fingers twitched, and his eyelids fluttered. His voice was weak, but it broke the air like a sudden crack. Eva. I rushed to his side. I'm here. He opened his eyes, cloudy but focused. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have told you. But I needed to know. Know what? I asked, leaning closer. If your kindness was real. Tears rose in my eyes. Of course it was. He nodded slowly. Then everything belongs to you. And just like yesterday, he slipped back into sleep, leaving me holding a truth that felt too heavy to stand under. I spent the afternoon in the hospital cafeteria, staring at a cup of untouched tea. Everything Arthur said kept replaying in my head. What did he mean by belong to you? Why would a man with considerable assets, as the lawyer said, choose me, a simple caregiver, someone with nothing special except compassion, for something this huge? But the part that bothered me most was the test. Was my kindness something he had been measuring? Watching? Judging? I didn't know how to feel about that. As I sat there, my clinic supervisor, Ms. Bergen, called me. Eva, I hope everything's okay, she said. Someone from the city office called. They said they needed your employment records. Why would they need that? I asked. They wouldn't say. They only mentioned your name came up in a legal review. My stomach twisted. Legal review? About what? She sighed. I don't know. But whatever this is, it's big. After the call, I walked outside the hospital. The air was crisp. A black car idled on the street with a driver inside. He stepped out when he saw me. Ms. Carter? He asked. Yes. I've been asked to take you to a secure location for a briefing. My heart nearly stopped. Who requested that? He answered calmly. Mr. Johnson. I took a slow step back. He's unconscious. The driver didn't blink. He prepared instructions in advance. Everything inside me screamed to run, but another part of me needed answers. I got into the car. We drove across the city for almost 30 minutes until we reached a tall building with tinted windows. Inside, the elevator led to a private floor. When the doors opened, a woman in a navy suit approached. Ms. Carter, she said warmly. Welcome. We've been expecting you. Expecting me for what? I asked. She smiled gently. For the truth. The woman led me into a large room with long windows and soft white lights. The place felt expensive in a quiet, controlled way, like a space meant for decisions that changed futures. Please sit, she said. I sat at a round table while she placed a slim stack of papers in front of me. These are the first documents Mr. Johnson prepared. I didn't touch them. I don't understand. Why me? She nodded, as if she expected that question. Mr. Johnson built a business empire decades ago. He walked away from it after a personal tragedy. Since then, he has watched people with power fight over money that never mattered to him. I frowned. But what does that have to do with me? He wanted to see if someone without greed, someone who had no idea what he owned, could still show genuine kindness. You were the only person he ever saw treat him like a human being, not a burden. Her words hit me deeply. But before I could reply, she added, Please understand, Ms. Carter. If you accept his terms, your life will change. If you walk away, everything will be redirected to a long list of charities he chose. I took a shaky breath. You talk like this has already been decided. She met my eyes. By him, yes. But not by you. My hands trembled as I finally pulled the first page closer. The words blurred a little, but one line stood out clearly. Primary heir. Eva Carter. I covered my mouth. This feels wrong, I whispered. I never asked for this. That's exactly why he chose you. Before I could speak again, the door opened. MacLeon walked in. His eyes widened when he saw me, then the documents on the table. Shock turned to fear, then to something darker. "Eva," he said slowly, "what have you done?" I jumped to my feet. "MacLeon, how did you find me?" He didn't look at me. His eyes locked on the papers like they were some living creature. "Someone messaged me. Said you were meeting lawyers. Said you were hiding things again." I clenched my jaw. "I'm not hiding anything." He stepped closer. "Looks like you are." The woman in the navy suit spoke calmly. "Sir, this is a private legal meeting. You have no authorization to be here." MacLeon ignored her. "What is all this, Eva? Why is this old man giving you things? Did you know him before?" I felt heat rising in my chest. "I treated him at the clinic, MacLeon." "That's it." He shook his head. "No one gives away an empire because of clinic visits." "Empire?" I whispered. "How do you even know that word?" He froze. The room went silent. The woman looked between us. "Whoever told you to come here, sir, did not act legally. If you don't leave, we will call security." MacLeon's voice cracked. "Eva, don't let them fool you. You don't know what you're getting into." I took a slow breath. "You don't trust me." "I'm trying," he said. "But people don't just hand strangers power like this." The woman stepped forward. "Ms. Carter, we can continue this another time if you wish." MacLeon reached for my arm, but I pulled back. For the first time since I met him, I saw something I didn't recognize in his eyes. A mix of fear and greed. "I need to think," I said quietly. MacLeon opened his mouth, but I walked past him and headed for the elevator. My heart was pounding. My thoughts were spinning. When the doors closed, I felt something shift inside me. For years, I believed lies were the worst thing MacLeon ever brought into my life. But now, I wasn't sure lies were the real danger. The truth was, when I stepped outside the tall building, the cool air hit my face like a splash of water. Everything felt loud, cars, voices, footsteps, but inside me, there was only silence. I walked slowly toward the sidewalk, unsure where to go. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to see MacLeon, not while his eyes from earlier were still burned into my memory. I kept hearing Arthur's weak voice. "If your kindness was real, everything belongs to you." It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a weight I wasn't strong enough to carry. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Be careful what you accept. Some truths destroy more than lies." I froze. My fingers shook. I sent back a simple question. "Who is this?" No answer. I headed toward the nearest bus stop, but the same black car from earlier pulled up beside me. The window lowered, and the driver leaned over. "Ms. Carter, Mr. Aldrin requested another short meeting." "It's urgent." More urgency. More secrets. More pressure. "I can't," I said. "Not right now." He nodded respectfully. "Then he asked me to give you this." He held out a small sealed envelope with my name written on the front. Handwritten, shaky, old-fashioned. My stomach tightened. "Is this from Arthur?" "Yes. He wrote it 2 days ago." I took it, holding it like it might fall apart in my hands. The driver didn't leave until he saw me tuck it safely into my bag. Then he drove off without another word. I walked to a quiet bench and opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter in uneven handwriting. "Eva, when the world starts asking questions, remember your heart already knows the answers. Trust your own truth, not theirs. AJ." I swallowed hard. At that moment, I realized something important. Whatever Arthur gave me wasn't about wealth. It was about responsibility. And I wasn't sure I was ready for any of it. I didn't go home. Instead, I rode a bus across the city and got off near the river. My quiet place. I often came here after long clinic shifts to clear my head. The sound of water moving always helped steady my thoughts. I sat on a bench under a willow tree, clutching Arthur's letter. The words repeated in my mind. Trust your own truth, not theirs. But who were they? The lawyers. The people bowing in the hospital corridors? MacLeon? Or someone else entirely? As I sat there, I noticed a man standing across the walkway. He wore a grey coat and sunglasses, even though the sky was cloudy. At first, I thought he was just looking at the water, but after a few minutes, I felt certain he was watching me. Another message arrived on my phone. You shouldn't be alone. I looked around quickly, heart hammering. No one nearby had a phone out. I typed fast. Who are you? No reply. I stood up and walked away from the river, moving toward the main street. I tried to act calm, but my pulse raced. After a few steps, I glanced over my shoulder. The man in the grey coat was following me. I walked faster. He matched my pace. I turned down a busy street, hoping he'd get lost in the crowd, but every time I checked, he was still there. Then he called out softly, Ms. Carter. I froze. He stopped several feet behind me and raised his hands slowly, like he didn't want to scare me. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. But you're being watched by people who will. My breath caught. What do you want? To warn you, he replied. Mr. Johnson's decision has enemies. Powerful ones. I felt my blood run cold. Why me? I'm nobody. He shook his head. Not anymore. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood trembling in the street, realizing that whatever Arthur had left me was bigger, and more dangerous, than I ever imagined. By the time I reached home, night had already settled. The windows glowed from inside, and I felt a wave of dread before I even touched the door handle. MacLeon was sitting at the kitchen table. The lights were harsh, and he had his arms crossed tightly over his chest. A half-empty glass of water sat in front of him, like he'd been waiting a long time. Where were you? He asked quietly. I took off my coat, avoiding his eyes. I needed time to think. About what? His voice sharpened. About him. I swallowed. MacLeon, this isn't about him. It's about something I don't understand yet. Something complicated. He slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. Complicated. Eva, you walked into a world of money, secrets, lawyers, strange men calling you Mrs. Johnson. And you expect me to just sit here and stay calm. I felt tired. Bone deep tired. I never asked for any of this. He stood up. But you didn't walk away either. I met his eyes. Would you? If a man you helped, a man who had no one, trusted you with something huge, would you walk away without knowing why? His mouth opened, then closed. He didn't have an answer. I took a deep breath. I need to figure this out on my own. I don't want us to fight about it. He stepped closer. I'm fighting because I care. But something in his voice was off. Too sharp. Too desperate. You care, I said softly, or you're scared of what this means. He looked away. That was my answer. I walked past him toward the stairs. I'm going to sleep. Behind me, I heard him whisper, barely audible. I won't lose you. Not again. Those words sent a shiver through me. Because they sounded less like love. And more like a warning. I woke up early, long before the sun rose. My dreams had been restless. Shadows, whispered warnings, Arthur's tired eyes. When I went downstairs, the house was quiet. MacLeon's shoes were gone, and a note sat on the counter. Went out. We need to talk later. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or worried. At the clinic, everyone seemed distracted. Conversations stopped when I walked by. People stared at me a second too long. Even Ms. Bergen looked nervous when she pulled me aside. Eva. I received another call this morning. From the city officials. My heart thudded. Again. They said Mr. Johnson's case has been flagged for review. They want to speak to you. Speak to me about what? She hesitated. They didn't say. But they asked about your work hours, your behavior, and whether you ever visited patients outside the clinic. I felt sick. Are they accusing me of something? I hope not, she said softly. But be careful. The rest of the day was busy as usual. My hands shook during checkups. I kept feeling like someone was watching me. Every time the clinic phone rang, I jumped. During my lunch break, I stepped outside to breathe. That's when a different car, dark blue, windows tinted, rolled slowly past the clinic. The back seat window lowered just an inch. And a familiar voice whispered, "Stop chasing the truth, Eva. Let it die." The window rose and the car drove off. I stared after it, my chest tight. Someone didn't want me learning the truth about Arthur. Someone was afraid of what he left behind. And somehow, all roads kept leading to me. When I returned inside, Ms. Bergen said, "There's another call for you." They said it's urgent. I picked up the phone. A calm voice spoke. "Ms. Carter, this is the Central Court office. We need you to come in tomorrow morning. It concerns Mr. Johnson." My blood turned cold. The world around me felt like it was closing in. The next morning, the sky was gray and heavy, like the world already knew something bad was coming. I walked into the courthouse with shaking hands, wishing I could turn around. Wishing Arthur had never chosen me. Wishing everything could go back to being simple. A clerk led me down a long hallway to a small room with glass walls. Inside sat two officials. One man, one woman. Both of them had folders stacked in front of them. "Ms. Carter," the woman said with a polite smile. "Thank you for coming." I sat down. "What is this about?" The man opened a folder. "It concerns your relationship with Mr. Arthur Johnson." I swallowed. I only knew him as Mr. Ellis. He was my patient at the clinic. That's it. He didn't react. "We are aware of his use of an alias. We also know he placed you as his primary heir." My chest tightened. "I didn't ask for that." "We understand," the woman said kindly. "However, the amount involved is significant. And whenever such assets are transferred, we must rule out fraud or coercion." My breath caught. "Are you saying I forced him to choose me?" "Not at all," she said. "But others may claim that." The man slid a photo across the table. It was MacLeon, standing outside the tall building from earlier, talking to a man in a gray coat. My stomach dropped. The woman continued softly, "Do you trust your fiancé, Ms. Carter?" I stared at the picture, unable to speak. The man in the gray coat looked like the one who warned me at the river. The male official leaned forward. "We believe people close to Mr. Johnson may be watching you. And they may try to use you." I felt lightheaded. The woman asked, "Has your fiancé asked about Mr. Johnson's assets? Pressured you? Followed you?" I breathed slowly. "Yes." They exchanged a glance. "Ms. Carter," the man said firmly, "for your safety and the protection of Mr. Johnson's estate, we need you to tell us everything." A chill ran through me. Because for the first time, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about danger. And I was standing right in the middle of it. I left the courthouse feeling like the ground under me had cracked open. The official's questions echoed in my mind. "Do you trust your fiancé? Has he pressured you? Has he followed you?" I didn't want to believe MacLeon could ever be part of something dangerous. But the photo didn't lie. He had spoken to the same man who warned me at the river. Why? The cold air outside felt sharp against my face as I hurried toward the bus stop. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone when it vibrated. A message appeared. "Stop talking to them." My heart pounded. I typed back, "Who is this?" No answer. I looked around, trying to see if anyone was watching me, but the street was too busy. People walked past, cars honked, and city noise drowned out my thoughts. I boarded the next bus and sat at the very back, curling into the seat like I could disappear. As the bus started moving, I replayed everything. Arthur's letter, the men watching me, the strange warnings, the courthouse questions. It all felt like parts of a giant puzzle that I wasn't allowed to see fully yet. When I stepped off near my street, a strange silence hung in the air. The tall trees stood still, and no cars passed by. My house looked normal from the outside, lights glowing softly through the windows. But the moment I stepped inside, I stopped cold. Every drawer in the living room was open. The cabinet doors hung wide. Papers covered the floor. Someone had searched the entire place. I stepped forward slowly, my breath tight. "MacLeon." I called out softly. No answer. I picked up a paper from the floor, one of the documents the lawyers had given me. Someone had circled Arthur's signature in heavy red ink. A sudden sound came from upstairs. A slow, heavy footstep. I froze. Someone else was in the house. I held my breath, listening. Another slow creak echoed from upstairs. My heart hammered so loudly I felt it in my ears. I took a shaky step backward toward the door, but before I reached it, a familiar voice called down softly. "Eva. It's me. MacLeon." Relief hit me first, but it didn't last long. "What happened here?" I asked as he walked down the stairs. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide, almost frantic. "I came home and found it like this. Someone broke in." I studied him carefully. "And you didn't call the police?" He hesitated. I wanted to talk to you first." The answer made something twist in my stomach. He stepped closer. "Eva, you need to tell me what's going on. Why are strangers calling you? Why are government officials asking about you? Why is your name tied to a man with millions?" I stepped back slightly. "You're scaring me." "I'm scaring you." His voice cracked. "You've been lying to me for days." "I didn't lie," I said softly. "I just didn't have answers." The tension between us grew thick, like a rope pulled too tight. Then MacLeon said something that made my blood run cold. "I know you met with the lawyers again today." I froze. "How?" He blinked, like he knew he'd said too much. Because I care. Because people have been asking questions about you. Because you're in danger." "Who's been asking questions?" He swallowed. "I can't tell you." I stepped back again. "MacLeon, who are you talking to outside that building?" "The man in the grey coat." His eyes widened. "How do you know about that?" I stared at him, fear spreading through my chest. "Did you let him in here? Do you know who broke into the house?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I grabbed my bag and rushed toward the front door. "Eva, wait." But I didn't. I stepped outside into the cold night, right as a black car pulled up to the curb, blocking my path. The window rolled down, and the man in the grey coat stared straight at me. For a moment, everything froze. The cold air, the quiet street, the beating in my chest. The man in the grey coat stepped out of the car and motioned calmly for me to come closer. MacLeon shouted from the doorway, "Eva, don't go with him." But something inside me whispered that if I stayed, the danger would only grow. The man said, "Ms. Carter, you're not safe here. Please, come with me." His voice was steady, not threatening. I looked between him and MacLeon, whose face had turned desperate. "Listen to me," MacLeon said, stepping onto the porch. "You don't know him. You don't know what he wants. And you do." I shot back. The man in the grey coat turned to MacLeon. "You've done enough." MacLeon's jaw clenched. "She's not going with you." The tension crackled like electricity. I backed away from both of them. "Stop," I said. "Someone tell me what's going on." The man faced me. "My name is Rowan Clark. I worked for Arthur for 10 years. My job was to watch over him. And after he chose you, my job became watching over you. Watching, I repeated, shaky. Not threatening. He shook his head. Never. But others are watching too. People who want the estate. People who think you're in the way. My stomach twisted. Who? He looked at MacLeon. MacLeon looked away. Something inside me broke. MacLeon, I whispered. What did you do? I didn't betray you, he said quickly. I needed to know what was happening. They reached out to me first. I thought they wanted to protect you. They? I asked sharply. Who is they? Before he could answer, Rowan stepped between us. Ms. Carter, Arthur woke up. My breath hitched. He, what? He's asking for you, Rowan said. Right now. I stared at him. At MacLeon. At the broken pieces of our home. Then I made a choice. I'm going with him, I said softly. MacLeon's face fell. Rowan opened the car door. And my world shifted. The drive to the private facility felt unreal. My hands wouldn't stop trembling, and Rowan noticed. You're safe here, he said gently. No one knows we're coming. No one knows Arthur is awake. Why now? I whispered. Why is everything happening at once? Because Arthur finally told us his decision, Rowan replied. And it changed everything. When we arrived, the building was nothing like a normal hospital. No signs. No visitors. No noise. Just clean hallways and soft lights. Rowan led me through a secured door, then another, until we reached a quiet room. Inside, Arthur lay propped up on pillows, his eyes open. He smiled weakly when he saw me. Eva, you came. My throat closed. Arthur, what is happening? Why did you call me Mrs. Johnson? Why am I the one listed everywhere? Why am I in danger? He lifted a trembling hand, and I stepped closer so he could hold it. I left my old world years ago, he said softly. But that world never let go of me. People wanted my money, my name, my legacy. I trusted no one. His eyes softened. Until you. My breath shook. But I didn't do anything. You were kind to a man who had nothing, he said. No questions. No judgment. You brought me tea. You tied my scarf. You saw me as human when everyone else looked away. Tears filled my eyes. Arthur continued. I gave you the title Mrs. Johnson because the only person I trusted with my life was you. I swallowed hard. But why give me everything? Because kindness must lead my legacy, he whispered. Not greed. Not fear. He let go of my hand and nodded toward Rowan, who handed me a folder. Inside was paperwork naming me the legal steward of Arthur's entire estate. Properties, accounts, foundations, and something called the Linden Project. I stared at Arthur. I can't take this. You already have, he whispered. Now you must protect it. And then he added something that made my heart stop. Because someone else wants it. And they are closer than you think. My world tilted. Who? I whispered. Who's trying to take it? Arthur's expression darkened with fear. Not for himself, but for me. Someone who believes they deserve everything I built, he said weakly. Someone who won't stop. Before he could say more, Rowan burst into the room. We have to go. Now. My pulse spiked. What's happening? They found us, Rowan said. The ones following you. They tracked MacLeon, and he led them here. My chest squeezed. MacLeon? He didn't mean. He didn't know who he was dealing with, Rowan said. But they know about you. About Arthur's choice. Warning alarms began buzzing down the hall. Arthur grabbed my sleeve with surprising strength. Eva, listen to me. His voice shook with urgency. You must finish what I began. The Linden Project. It's a place for people who have no one. A home. A refuge. Promise me you'll complete it. Tears blurred my vision. I promise. His hand slipped from mine as Rowan pulled me toward the door. We moved fast through back corridors as footsteps stormed the building. Rowan guided me into a service elevator and pressed the lowest level. As the doors closed, I whispered, "Is Arthur safe?" Rowan looked at me gently. "He will be now. You are the target." My chest tightened. "Why me?" "Because Arthur chose you," he said. "And they can't control what they can't predict." When we reached the underground exit, a car waited. Subtle. Unmarked. Rowan handed me another envelope, sealed, with Arthur's initials. "He wanted you to have this only after you promised." I held it tightly as he opened the door. Outside, sirens wailed above us. Shouting echoed through the halls. But inside me, a strange calm formed. Because I knew who I was now. Not Mrs. Johnson. Not an accidental heir. But a woman trusted to protect a legacy built on kindness. As Rowan drove us into the night, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sentence, written in Arthur's fragile handwriting. "Integrity is louder than promises. And yours saved my life." I pressed the paper to my chest and let the tears fall. For the first time in weeks, I felt something real. Purpose. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. The end.